What's up, y'all? Welcome back to WBC Central. My name is Shawn Spradling. This is a Baseball Isn't Boring podcast. Today is April 11th. We are in the full swing of things with the regular season. We got Major League Baseball, NPB, the KBO, CPBL is happening. Mexican League starting soon. The Dutch League has already started. The Czech League has already began, Czech Extraliga. So baseball all around the world is happening. WBC is over, but we got plenty of baseball year long. We're kind of cruising through things right now, just coasting through the season. It's already like two weeks into the season for Major League Baseball. So it's been a lot of fun. Today, I thought I would do a fun recap of kind of the stats, the numbers of the 2023 WBC. So I wanted to go over the statistic leaders from the Classic this year. There's a lot of players that you probably know. Shohei Ohtani led in a lot of categories, or at least was at the top of most, both hitting and pitching categories. But then maybe some names that you probably aren't familiar with, or didn't realize they led in certain categories during the WBC. So that's why I kind of wanted to go over this, because we didn't really get to do a statistical breakdown. It's not going to be super in depth. I'm not going into like any of the like super advanced metrics, just kind of the overarching basic stats for baseball. ERA, OPS, home runs, things like that. So yeah, we can go ahead and start. I wanted to first go over the All-World Baseball Classic team for 2023, just to kind of give us an overview of kind of the top performers from the Classic. Some of these guys led in some of these categories that we're going to go over. Others didn't. But a lot of them, I mean, they all had incredible performances in the World Baseball Classic. So if you're looking at, and you can find this on my Twitter, you can find it on the WBC Twitter themselves, on WBC's website. But they did release an All-World Baseball Classic team for 2023. Now, this is not my selections. Some of these players I would have maybe changed, but most of these players were the top performers of their category, of their position. So yeah, if you're looking at the team, if you go around the diamond, starting at catcher, Salvador Perez behind the plate, Yu Chang at first base, Javier Baez at second, Trey Turner at shortstop, Yoan Moncada at third base, left field, Randy Arozarena, or I guess outfield, Randy Arozarena, Mike Trout, and Masataka Yoshida. So a lot of those guys were the face of the WBC the whole time. Maybe a couple guys that were a little more under the radar. Yu Chang, I don't think a lot of people realized how dominant he was during the WBC. He had some incredible moments, incredible home runs. But since they didn't advance out of the pool stage, we didn't get to see too much of him. Same with Salvador Perez. He had a great WBC behind the plate and at the dish. So glad that he got that. Maybe his last time to play in the WBC. I don't know if he'll be able to in the next WBC. He might be too old. I'm not sure. And then DH, of course, Shohei Ohtani. And that's a good transition into the pitcher side of things. Also Shohei Ohtani. He was named to the team twice, both for DH and for pitcher. The other pitchers, along with Ohtani, were Patrick Sandoval and Miguel Romero, who Romero will definitely be talking about later in this episode. But that's the All-World Baseball Classic team. Guys like Trout, Arozarena, Yoshida, obviously Trey Turner with his moments, his grand slam and everything. Those are some guys that we'll forever remember in the 2023 World Baseball Classic. And so I'm glad that they were immortalized into this team. Again, not the team that I named. This is the team that the World Baseball Classic voters named. And I think it's mostly accurate for the most part. Maybe at second base, I think Javier Baez had a really good performance, but Edouard Julien was really good. We'll talk about him later as well. So that's the World Baseball Classic team, the All-WBC team for 2023. So now let's get into the statistic leaders for the 2023 World Baseball Classic. So we'll start on the pitching side. Let's start with ERA. The 2023 World Baseball Classic ERA leaders. So there were 5 pitchers. Now, it's hard because at most it was only 7 games. So it's not like we have a huge amount of innings that these pitchers pitched. But there were 5 pitchers that did not allow a run, 5 starting pitchers that did not allow a single run. Those were Noah Skirot for Canada, Park Si-wong for Korea, Humberto Mejia for Panama, Dean Kramer, Israel, Christian Javier, Dominican Republic, Harold Arauz for Panama, and then Jose De Leon for Puerto Rico. And that one, by far, was the most impressive of all of them. All of those guys were lights out in their starts. They all had really good performances, but Jose De Leon was the one that rose above the rest. The reason for that is because he didn't allow a single run, but not only that, he didn't allow any hits or any walks. 5.2 perfect innings, 10 Ks, followed by a perfect bullpen performance as well. So technically it was a full game of perfect, no hit, no walk, no one got on base innings. Now, we can argue whether it was an actual perfect game or not. It was announced that it was a perfect game initially, but since it ended in 8 innings, I don't think the scorekeepers actually ruled it an official perfect game. But they asked Jose De Leon after the game, they were like, so it's only went 8 innings. Do you consider it an actual perfect game? And he was like, it doesn't matter to me. Like, it was a perfect game to me and to us, this team. So that's all that matters. So yeah, the fact that, I mean, it was just a ridiculous performance by him. 5.2 perfect innings, 10 Ks. Jose De Leon had the start of the tournament and one of the best starts in WBC history. It was incredible. So those are the 5 pitchers that led the WBC in ERA. Not any of those 5 allowed a single run in their starts. So, of course, there were a couple relievers that did the same, but they didn't start games. They pitched like an inning. So I didn't include them in this. Move on to the innings pitched leaders. So the pitchers that pitched the most innings, there were 4 pitchers that tied for second with 9 innings pitched. Roenis Elias for Cuba, Lance Lynn, USA, Marcus Stroman, Puerto Rico, Julio Urias for Mexico. All those guys pitched more than one start, and all those guys were starting pitchers, and all pitched 9 innings. The WBC leader, however, pitched 9.2 innings over 3 games. Probably know his name. 2 starts and 1 closer appearance. Got the save in the WBC final. It was Shohei Ohtani. Shohei Ohtani had the most innings pitched of any player in the WBC, 9.2 innings pitched. So, of course, everybody's going to remember his performance, especially in that closer appearance in the final against Team USA to win the WBC. We'll move on to strikeouts. So, the strikeout leaders for pitchers, tied for third place. We'll go top 3 because there were a couple players tied for third place. Tied for third place and third, second, or I guess tied for third and the second place were all on Team Japan. But tied for third, Roki Sasaki and Shohei Ohtani, both at 11 Ks in their appearances total. So second place, Yoshinobu Yamamoto. So like I said, all 3 of those guys, Samurai Japan pitchers, which shows how dominant Japan was pitching in this tournament. I mean, we were talking about it for months before the WBC. If not the best, they were at least tied for the best heading into the WBC before the rosters were announced in the pitching department. But after the Dominican pitchers had to drop out and USA didn't get their top guys, a couple of their pitchers had to drop out as well. Japan was far and away the team with the best starting pitching. So not surprised there at all. Roki Sasaki, Shohei Ohtani at 11 strikeouts, Yoshinobu Yamamoto at second with 12 strikeouts and 7.1 innings pitched. But the leader in strikeouts for the WBC, which was a shock to me until I look back on it, maybe to you as well, wasn't from Team USA, wasn't from Japan or Mexico. Probably none of the guys that you would expect, but Miguel Romero for Cuba. He led the entire WBC with strikeouts with 13 Ks. He was 2-0 with 13 Ks, 2 earned runs over 8.2 innings pitched. He was dominant. He was a stud. His stuff was incredible throughout the tournament. He looked really, really good. It's also the most Ks, so most strikeouts in a single WBC in Cuban national team history. So not the most ever by a player of any team, but Cuban national team history is pretty rich in the WBC. They've had some very deep runs in the WBC. So the fact that he now has the most 13 Ks in a single WBC is pretty incredible. So Miguel Romero, most strikeouts in this WBC. So those are all the stats I wanted to go over on the pitching side of things. It's kind of hard to do saves. There were a couple guys, there were like 5 or 6 guys that got 2 saves. Actually, you know what? I'll go ahead and pull that up because that is kind of notable, actually. So if we go to the pitching saves, there were 1, 2, 3, 4 players that had 2 saves. So that includes Sung Chia-Hao for Chinese Taipei or Taiwan, Ryan Presley for Team USA, Giovanni Gallegos for Mexico, and Wendell Floranis for the Kingdom of the Netherlands. So, yeah, I mean, it was pretty impressive that Sung Chia-Hao and Wendell Floranis got those both for Taiwan and Netherlands in just 4 games. Neither of those teams made it out of the pool stage, was what I'm trying to say. Mexico and USA both did. So they had more opportunities to close. But Giovanni Gallegos had 3 opportunities to save. Unfortunately, he did not get one of those. But yeah, those 4 players led with 2 saves. Like I said, the rest of the stats are kind of hard to go by, like whip. I mean, there's just too many pitchers that were in relief appearances. Like how many, I don't want to go, like we can talk about walks, I guess, but Zhang Wang, he led in walks. But other than that, like no, there were no complete games, no shutouts, no one pitched a full game, hits. There just weren't enough innings to like fully record like all these any other stats. Like wins, bunch of players just got 2 wins or 1 win. So those are the main pitching statistics I wanted to go over: ERA, innings pitched, and Ks. Now on the offensive side of things, there was a couple more categories I wanted to go over. So we'll move on to hitting. We'll move on to the offensive side of things. As I take a drink of water. All right. So on the offensive side of things, let's start out with home runs. That's what everybody wants to know. That is what's one of the most exciting parts about baseball. So there were 17 people tied for 3rd place with 2 home runs. So I'm not going to go over all those players. But in 2nd place was someone who also didn't make it out of the pool stage of the WBC, which is pretty surprising. But Ha-Sung Kim was 2nd place in home runs with 3 home runs in just 4 games in the WBC. So pretty impressive that he was able to to do that in his limited amount of games. But yeah, so 3 home runs for him. He had 6 RBI. Actually didn't have a great average at all. He only hit 188, but because of his 3 home runs, his OPS was over 1,000 for those 4 games. So a pretty funny slash line for him, hitting below the Mendoza line, but having an OPS over 1,000. So he was runner up in home runs with 3, but the leader, and I'm sure a lot of you can guess it because it seemed like every day he was hitting a home run in the WBC. Mr. America, one of the biggest moments in WBC history and Team USA history, Trey Turner led the WBC with 5 home runs. And that was in 6 games, I believe. Yep, 6 games. So he only played in 6 games, had 5 home runs, almost a home run a game. So absolutely dominant. He was one of the most fun players to watch in the World Baseball Classic. I already kind of liked Trey Turner before, just liked watching him play, but I'm like, I like him so much more now. Just like, he just dominated, and you could tell he loved playing for Team USA. The energy, the intensity he had was so much fun to watch. Seeing the team rally around him and him be all energetic, jumping up and down every home run was awesome. So yeah, the biggest home runs that obviously we're going to remember. He had one versus Japan in the 2nd inning off of Shota Imanaga in the WBC final. That was huge. Of course, USA lost that game, but it was still a massive moment to start that game to give USA an opportunity to win the game. But the biggest one by far, and one of the biggest moments in WBC history, Team USA history in the WBC, and honestly, I'm not saying it's the top moment by any means, but one of the top moments, I would say, top tier in any sport of Team USA history, any U.S. national team. This was a top moment. Against Venezuela, in the 8th inning, in the quarterfinals. Bases loaded, 2 strikes, down by 2. He absolutely unloads on a pitch to hit a grand slam. Down by 2 for multiple innings, I believe. USA was able to come back with that hit to go ahead and beat Venezuela to make it to the WBC semifinal. Talk about like just absolutely clutch. It was the 8th inning, bases loaded, 2 strikes. It was ridiculous. I was jumping up and down. I know Twitter went absolutely insane. Definitely one of the top moments of this WBC and any WBC, like I said. But that was his biggest home run, one of 5 that he had in this tournament. So yeah, that's home runs. Let's go on to hits. There were 5 players tied at 10 hits. So I'll go ahead and name all of those because they led the WBC, which is funny that 5 players had the WBC, the tournament lead this year. Those 5 players were Nolan Arenado, Mookie Betts, Joey Meneses, Yoan Moncada, and Shohei Ohtani, of course. Nolan Arenado and Mookie Betts on Team USA, Joey Meneses for Mexico, Yoan Moncada for Cuba, and Ohtani for Japan. Moncada and Meneses did it in only 6 games, which is pretty impressive. The others did it in 7. So it's good for them. They got 10 hits in 6 games, both for Cuba and Mexico. Both of them made it to the WBC semifinals, but not to the final. Ohtani won WBC MVP. I mean, he led in hits. He led in a lot of other categories, so not surprising there. One thing I also wanted to note, Mookie Betts, 10 hits, but only one of those was an extra base hit. All 9 others were singles. So he also had, he had a funny stat line, slash line. If you look at it, his OPS was only 668, but he hit over 300 with those 10 hits. He actually also only struck out once. So super odd slash line. His OPS and his average were almost the same, even though he hit over, he led the WBC in hits. So that was super interesting. And there were a bunch of players that had 9 hits. So I won't go over all of those, but those were the 5 players that led in hits at 10 hits over the span of the WBC. Let's go on to RBI. There were tied for 4th. I'll do the top 4, including like the 2 that were tied for 4th. Were in 4th place, Shohei Ohtani and Yu Chang at 8 RBI. Ohtani did it in 7 games. Yu Chang did it in only 4 games. And that's what I mean by he dominated this WBC. He only had 4 games to do it. Unfortunately, and I was so sad about this, Taiwan was eliminated and relegated down to qualifiers. So the next WBC in 2026, they're going to have to requalify for the WBC in 2025. So hopefully they do so. I don't think they'll have a problem to, but if they do, I would assume that Yu Chang is on that team as well. Again, hopefully though, he'll get more opportunities to play more than 4 games, but 8 RBI in 4 games is pretty ridiculous. Ohtani, 8 RBI as well in 7 games. In 3rd place, Randy Arozarena had 9 RBI. One of the faces of the entire WBC, not surprising there. 2nd place, Trey Turner with all his home runs. He hit 11 RBI. And then to lead not only this WBC, not only Team Japan, but the most in a single WBC in World Baseball Classic history, Masataka Yoshida had 13 RBI in 7 games, which is absurd. That is the most, just ahead of Vladimir Valentin, who had 12 in 2017, and Taekyun Kim with Korea with 11 RBI in 2009. So 13 is the most of any WBC ever. It is an absolutely historic performance. Didn't have the highest like OPS or didn't have as many home runs, but he just scored, 13 RBI. He was just a run scoring machine. So a big reason why Samurai Japan was able to make it to the final. Ironic enough, he actually don't think he got a hit in the final, but up to that point, there was a case to be made that he would be their MVP. Couldn't give it to anybody but Shohei Ohtani in the end, though. But absolute historic performance for Masataka Yoshida, both for Samurai Japan and World Baseball Classic history. Most RBIs ever. So, let's move on to walks. walks. So who led the 2023 World Baseball Classic in walks? There were three. The top three actually were all Samurai Japan because they love to walk. They have incredible plate discipline. They're very disciplined at the plate. So tied for second, I guess. Let's see. Yeah, you know what? Top three were all in Samurai Japan. Goldschmidt and Arozarena were the other two in the top five. So we'll go top five. Rainier Arozarena, 6 walks in 6 games. Paul Goldschmidt in 4th place, 7 in 7 games, 7 walks in 7 games. I was super happy for Goldschmidt. He did a lot better this WBC than the last WBC. He didn't get much opportunity to play in 2017 because Eric Hosmer kind of went on a tear. So really happy for Goldie. 7 walks in 7 games. Tied for second place, Kensuke Kondo and Kazuma Okamoto, both for Samurai Japan. They had 8 walks in 7 games. And then to lead the WBC, none other than Shohei Ohtani. In 7 games, he drew 10 walks. 2 of those were intentional walks as well. So no other player had more than 1. So pretty remarkable. He just kept getting on base. No one wanted to pitch to him, pitching around him intentionally or not. 10 walks in the WBC. And this ties for the lead, or Ohtani tied for the league in hits and walks. And pitching was one of the most dominant pitchers. So again, makes sense why he won the WBC MVP. Let's move on to strikeouts, which isn't as fun of a category to talk about, but there was, probably one of the biggest storylines for me going into an at-bat we'll talk about was the strikeout leader. So top 3, in 3rd place was, let's do top 5. Tied for 4th and 5th. Kensuke Kondo, Julio Rodriguez, both had 9 strikeouts. Kensuke Kondo had it in 7 games. J-Rod only had it in 4 games. So 9 Ks in 4 games is not great. The nice thing is he's super young. He will no doubt be starting in the outfield, right in center field for Dominican Republic come 2026. So I would fully expect him to have a much better WBC that time around. And I'm confident they're making it out of the pool stage next time. So it's not going to be the only time. This isn't going to be the end of his WB stats, but he did not have a great time at the plate in 2023. Kensuke Kondo had a lot of runs, had a good amount of hits. He was second with 9th, right behind the lead, the WBC lead, but he had a lot of strikeouts as well. In 3rd place, Alan Trejo for Mexico. He had 10 in 6 games. And then 2nd place was Mike Trout. I didn't realize how many strikeouts he had in the WBC. That was kind of shocking to me. But in 7 games, 12 Ks. So, he still had a 962 OPS, so it didn't affect him too much, but that's still a ton of Ks. And then to lead the WBC, and this is the at-bat I wanted to talk about. The WBC leader in strikeouts at the plate was Munetaka Murakami with 13 Ks in 7 games. I tweeted this out the night that Team Japan was playing Mexico in the semifinals. Going into the 9th inning, we knew that Munetaka Murakami was going to get us bat. There was a runner. There was 2 runners on base. Right before he walked up to bat, I tweeted this out. I said, if there was ever a player that was due for a massive moment, it would be Munetaka Murakami right now. That's what I tweeted. You can look it up. One of my favorite tweets, honestly, because of what happened right after that. The reason I said that is because not only did he lead the WBC in strikeouts, he had not looked good at all in the WBC. He didn't look good in the WBC games before, like the exhibition games and the pre-classic warm-up games. And he didn't even look good to end the season in NPB last year, from what I understand. So it had been a couple month stretch that he did not look like himself. So I was thinking, man, this is a player that is due. He is known as probably the best bat in Japan right now, has been ice cold the last week, the last 2 weeks, and the last couple months, led all players in strikeouts at the plate. So thankfully, even though he led in strikeouts, he was able to come through in that moment. I was so happy for him. Obviously, it was sad for Mexico, but I was so happy to see him pull through. The team had rallied around him, had kept encouraging him throughout the WBC, and he was able to pull through with the walk-off in one of the most incredible, biggest moments in WBC history. That walk-off was unbelievable. Just because of the situation it was. Mexico was the hottest team in the WBC up to that point, honestly. And he just didn't look good. So I was really happy for him. Then he followed up with a home run in the WBC final. So he ended on a hot note and already has hit, I believe, 2 home runs in NPB this season. So he's back to being the Munetaka Murakami that we know. Excited to see him the rest of the season. All right, let's go on to doubles. Doubles is kind of a fun one to look at because there are a couple players that we haven't talked about quite yet. So we look at the league leader in doubles. We got 1, 2, 3, 4 players that tied for second with 4 doubles. Got Salvador Perez, who was the catcher on the All-World Baseball Classic team. Shohei Ohtani with 4. For Japan, Yoan Moncada for Cuba, and Kensuke Kondo with Japan as well. So all those players had 4 doubles in somewhere between 4 to 7 games. Salvador Perez had 4 doubles in 4 games. That's pretty dominant. He was great. But the player that led the WBC in doubles was Randy Arozarena with 6. In 6 games, he had 6 doubles. So makes sense why we fell in love with him during the WBC. He just absolutely dominated at the plate. He had 9 hits, 6 of them were doubles, and 1 was a home run. So only 2 hits he had in the WBC were not for extra bases. But not only did he dominate at the plate, obviously he had all of those incredible plays in the outfield, at the wall, robbing people of home runs and just making incredible plays. And then not to mention his crossed arms celebration that has taken Mexico and Twitter and other sports even by storm. So it's kind of funny because I've said this previously, but I think this stat kind of helps reiterate it. Randy Arozarena, for 1 week, we got Shohei Ohtani, obviously, but for 1 week, Randy Arozarena became the face of baseball. He was all anyone was talking about on baseball Twitter for like that week leading up to the semifinal. So, of course, Shohei Ohtani won MVP, but Randy was just electric. And I wish I had another word to use because we've been saying electric for everything during the WBC. Rightfully so. But he was incredible. He was so much fun to watch, signing autographs over the outfield fence, 6 doubles, incredible plays in the outfield. Little league teams in Mexico up to Liga MX soccer players, all doing his crossed arms celebration. So super cool. Just his story playing for the Mexican team and just to see kind of the baseball world surround him and fall in love with him. That was a ton of fun. So that was doubles, and got 2 more categories I wanted to go over. Stolen bases is the next one. So let's go ahead and go over top three, because there was a lot of players with 2 stolen bases. But tied for second and third, tied for second with 3 stolen bases, Ronald Acuna Jr. and Tetsudo Yamada. Acuna for Venezuela, Tetsudo Yamada for Japan. Both players had 3 stolen bases. Yamada did it in 6 games. Ronald Acuna did it in 5. But the WBC leader, and this is one of the craziest stats, honestly, of all of these. Just unbelievable performance. And I was so upset because I got to interview him, but my mic didn't work in person. With 5 stolen bases in 4 games, Chavez Young for Great Britain. So now we can always forever say that Great Britain is in the history books for the WBC, which is pretty cool. But yeah, Chavez Young, 5 stolen bases, tied for all-time WBC record in 1 WBC. No, this is for all WBC combined. Chavez Young is tied for the lead, all WBC history, with 5 stolen bases, and he did it in a single WBC. He ties all time with Tsuyoshi Nishioka in Japan, who did it in 8 games. Chavez Young only did it in 4. And so, I mean, I think he had 3 against Canada, 3 of the 5, or at least 2. I think he had 3 against Canada, including stealing home against Canada, which was the first time someone has ever stolen home plate in the WBC. So Chavez Young with a historic performance again on the base paths at this time. So he's incredible. He's dynamic, again, electric. He is so much fun to watch. Hopefully he gets a chance to make it up to the bigs, but he will forever be known as a Great Britain legend in the 2023 World Baseball Classic. Now he's in the history books. He was awesome. And like I said, I was so upset. This is a story I haven't told yet, but Chavez Young was the first player that I interviewed when I was in person in Phoenix for the WBC. And I was so nervous because I've never done interviews in person. So I didn't know how to do them. And I went up to some friends, people that I met there in person. I was like, how do you do this? Do you just walk up to a player? Like, I want to have the right etiquette. I wanted to be respectful. I didn't know the right times to interview these players, like when it's okay to, when we can go on the field, who we can talk to, who we need to like clear it with. And they were like, yeah, you can just go up to players if they're done with BP and just go ask them if they want to talk for a couple minutes. So I finally got the courage to do that after seeing a couple of other people do it. I went up to Chavez Young because I knew he was like very relatable, very easy to talk to. Went up to him and I was like, hey man, do you have like a minute or two? I'd love to ask you some questions. And it was a great interview. He's like, yeah, sure. He was a great interview. I had the little mini mic and he like held it up to his mouth and he just talked about the mini mic for like the first minute and just how much he loved it and how funny it was to him. So for the interview, was super excited to talk about it, talk about his baseball background, what this means to him and his family in Great Britain and the Bahamas, since he is Bahamian. And got to the end of that interview, thanked him, left, went to go try to replay it back, and the audio didn't record. I like didn't turn on the mic right or something, and I was so upset. So the first time I finally got an interview, I didn't get the audio, but oh well. I got plenty of others after that I'm sure many of you saw. But that was a bummer because that was before any of the games, and he ended up having a historic WBC. So good for him, excited for him, happy for him and Great Britain. Now we can move on to the last category on the offensive side of things, OPS. I wanted to go over OPS so that we didn't have to split it up into 3: average, on base percentage, slugging, because that'd just be too much with not a big enough sample size. So OPS leaders for the 2023 World Baseball Classic. And I'm pretty sure, unless you've already looked this up, you're going to be surprised at the number 1. So number 5, Trey Turner. He slashed 391, 440, and then 1,043. So total of 1,483. He was incredible. All his home runs. He only hit he hit 391, which is lower than most of the other guys, all the other guys in the top 5, but the slugging percentage of over 1,000 is what really did it with all his home runs, 5 home runs in the WBC to lead the tournament. Number 4, Tyler O'Neill for Canada. He hit 615, 722, 769. So a 615 average was pretty incredible. Of the players that played in 4 or more games, that was the most. It led the WBC. There were players that played in 3 that had more than that, but on 13 at-bats, he hit 615. So for a total of an OPS of 1,491 in 4th place. 3rd place for Dominican Republic with Juan Soto. He hit 400, 500, 1,000 for a total of 1,500. He had a really good WBC. Again, it ended in 4 games, unfortunately. No one expected that. But he is just like J-Rod, incredibly young. He will absolutely, no doubt, be in the outfield for the Dominican Republic come 2026. So we'll see him hit some more bombs in the WBC. I am confident. 2nd place, the face of baseball for a week, Randy Rosarena. He hit 450, 607, 900 for a total of 1,507. All those doubles really helped him out. His slugging percentage was pretty high because of that. Even though he didn't hit, I don't believe he hit too many home runs, but he hit 450 with a 900 slugging percentage. So pretty dominant. 1,507 in 2nd place. But the number 1, the player that led the WBC in OPS, and he didn't make the All-World Baseball Classic team. Talked about this before at the beginning of the episode. It was Edouard Julien for Canada. He slashed 538, 667, 1154. He had 2 home runs and 2 doubles. So that really gets the slugging percentage up. But an 1154 slugging percentage is absurd. That's higher than Trey Turner with his 5 home runs. His average was 538 too. So he was cruising through 4 games. They didn't make it out of the pool stage, so he didn't get it to capitalize that on that anymore. But 4 games, 7 hits over those 4 games, 2 home runs, 2 walks, 2 doubles, and 5 walks. So on base percentage was sky high too. So he probably had, he had one of the best performances at the plate of any player in the WBC, and he's still super young. So really excited to see him play in the future. He's only 23 years old. Hopefully, I wouldn't be surprised. Actually, I expect him to start it at second base for multiple WBCs in the future for Team Canada. Born in Canada, no doubt he'll want to play in the future. Looked like he had a lot of fun, and he did incredible. So in in a couple of games, I'm not sure how many, in AAA, his OPS is already over 900 for this season that's just started over the last week. So he should be getting the call up soon. I know he's supposed to in this next season or this season. So yeah, that's all the players that I wanted to go over, all the statistic categories that I wanted to talk about. If there's any other stats you wanted me to go over, I can totally do that. But again, the sample size is pretty small, so there isn't much more to go over. But it was a blast. Yeah, obviously the highlights: Shohei Ohtani, Randy Rosarena. You got Yoshinobu Yamamoto up there in strikeouts. You got all those guys on Japan with those walks. Goldschmidt finally getting to play well in the WBC and get his opportunity. Munetaka Murakami with all those strikeouts still pulling through in the end. Super clutch. Trey Turner, absolutely dominant performance. Kunya Tetsuya Yamada with 3 stolen bases. Chavez Young, all-time stolen base leader, tied for the league, the WBC lead. So it was a lot of fun. A lot of great performances, a lot to talk about in the history books. But that's all that I wanted to go over today. Feel free to reach out anytime. Going to be kind of cruising through this WBC content, international baseball content. If you want me to do anything like specific on the podcast, feel free to let me know on my Twitter. But yeah, for now, we're just kind of, like I said, kind of cruising, following Major League Baseball, NPB, the KBO, CPBL, as much as I can. And all other leagues if possible. Send me all the content that you want me to cover. Any tweets that you see, I would love to share them to help exposure with baseball in all countries around the world. So it's all we're covering today. Like I said, feel free to reach out. Let me know if you have any questions. If you want to talk about anything specific, I would love to. Next episode, I think I'm going to be covering Samurai Japan, kind of congratulating them on their win, their historic performance, undefeated, only the second team in WBC history to go undefeated throughout the WBC. So look forward to that. Probably going to have a special guest as well. So yeah, y'all have a great night, great day, great morning. Whenever you're listening to this or watching this on YouTube, feel free to subscribe. Would love for you to subscribe to my YouTube channel. You can just subscribe to the podcast. Baseball Isn't Boring on all streaming platforms. Rob, Coop, they all do a great job over there. And I'm super blessed to be able to have my podcast on their network. It's been a ton of fun, and I can't thank them enough. So yeah, feel free to reach out on Twitter at Shawn_Spradling. My TikTok is at Shawn Spradling. Y'all have a great day. Bye-bye.